When my grandfather passed away, I thought I had made peace with the loss. He was my mentor, my best friend, and the only person who ever truly understood me. Growing up, I spent every weekend at his countryside home, where we'd fix old radios, tinker with clocks, and talk about everything under the sun. He was a quiet man with sharp eyes, a gentle laugh, and stories that could fill a library. But what I didn't know was that even after his passing, he had one final story to tell, hidden inside a clock that would change everything I thought I knew about my family. It all started on the day of his funeral. The mood was somber, and the family tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. My father and uncles were already arguing over inheritance matters, their voices hushed but bitter. Grandpa's lawyer, Mr. Lewis, arrived with a small box labeled for Thomas. I was confused. Why would Grandpa leave something just for me? I wasn't expecting anything. He had 3 sons and several grandkids. I was just the quiet one who loved listening to his stories. When I opened the box later that evening, I found a single object inside. An old wooden clock. It was beautiful, clearly antique, but worn around the edges. The hands were stopped at 2:47. A small note was taped to the back, written in Grandpa's neat handwriting. "Time reveals everything, Tommy. Don't rush to fix it." I stared at those words for a long time. What did that even mean? Everyone else got something valuable. My cousin received Grandpa's old car. My uncle got his coin collection. My father got the house. And me? A broken clock with a cryptic message. I tried not to be disappointed, but I couldn't help it. Still, it was from Grandpa, so I placed it on my desk as a keepsake. A week later, something strange happened. I was sitting at my desk late at night, scrolling through my laptop, when I heard a faint tick-tick-tick. I froze. The clock was working, but I hadn't touched it. I leaned closer. It was definitely moving, but the hands were going backward, slowly, steadily ticking in reverse. I got chills. It was eerie, but fascinating. Maybe it was a mechanical glitch? I picked it up to inspect it when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A tiny keyhole on the side, partially hidden under the wooden frame. Grandpa and I had fixed hundreds of clocks together, but I'd never seen one designed like this. My curiosity took over. I went through Grandpa's old toolbox and found a set of winding keys. To my surprise, one of them fit perfectly. When I turned it, I heard a faint click, and the back panel of the clock popped open. Inside was a small envelope, yellowed with age. My heart started pounding as I carefully pulled it out. On the front it said, "For when you're ready to know the truth." Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper and a faded photograph. The photo was of a young woman standing next to Grandpa, except it wasn't my grandmother. The woman looked maybe 20, and they were standing in front of a house I didn't recognize. On the back of the photo, written in Grandpa's handwriting, was a date, June 12th, 1965. The letter explained everything. "Tommy, if you're reading this, it means my time has come. There are things I kept hidden from the family, not out of shame, but out of love. The woman in the photo is your real grandmother. Her name was Mary. She passed away before your father was born. What your family believes about my past isn't true. I remarried to provide stability. But the truth was buried along with the pain of losing her. There's more to our family than what you've been told. If you follow the address written below, you'll find what was lost." I sat there in stunned silence, staring at the letter. Grandpa had a first wife no one ever told me about? Why would my father hide that? Why would Grandpa keep it secret? The address led to a small town 2 hours away. My mind was racing, but I knew one thing for sure. I had to go. The next morning, I packed the clock, the letter, and the photo, and drove to the address. It led me to an old farmhouse surrounded by overgrown fields. The place looked abandoned, yet strangely familiar, as if I'd seen it in a dream. I knocked, expecting no answer, but an elderly woman opened the door. Her eyes widened when she saw the photo in my hand. "You found it," she whispered. Her name was Evelyn, and she introduced herself as Mary's sister, my great-aunt. She invited me inside, tears welling up in her eyes. She hadn't seen anyone from our family in decades. According to her, after Mary's death, Grandpa had promised to care for her and keep her connected to the family. But something happened, a falling out, a misunderstanding, that drove them apart. When Grandpa remarried, Evelyn was cut off completely. She handed me an old box she'd kept safe all those years. Inside were letters between her and Grandpa, love notes he wrote to Mary, and, most shockingly, documents showing that Grandpa once owned a large piece of farmland that had been signed over to someone else in the family under suspicious circumstances. It turned out my father and uncles had forced Grandpa to transfer ownership decades ago when his health was failing, promising to take care of things. But instead, they sold part of it off for profit. Grandpa must have found out later, but rather than confront them, he buried the truth. The clock wasn't just a keepsake, it was a message. He wanted me, the one person who always listened, to uncover what he couldn't reveal himself. When I returned home, I confronted my father about everything. At first, he denied it. He claimed Grandpa was confused in his later years. But when I showed him the letters and the deed copies, his face turned pale. He admitted it quietly. They had pressured Grandpa into signing over the land, thinking it was for the best, but later sold it and kept the money. I was furious. Not only had they betrayed Grandpa's trust, but they'd built their comfort off his hard work and pain. A week later, I met with Mr. Lewis, the family lawyer. I gave him the documents. After reviewing everything, he said something that made my father's expression crumble. If this is legitimate, Thomas has the right to claim part of the estate retroactively. Within months, the legal process began. My father and uncles tried everything to block it, but the evidence was airtight. The land was worth millions now due to development around the area. Grandpa had hidden just enough clues, records, letters, dates, to ensure I could trace it all. When the ruling came in my favor, my father refused to speak to me. He said I had destroyed the family. But deep down, I think he knew he had destroyed it long before I ever got involved. I used the money not for luxury, but to restore Grandpa's old farmhouse, the one where he and Mary had once lived. I repaired it with my own hands, using the same old tools we'd used together when I was a kid. I even hung the clock above the fireplace, still set to 2:47. It never worked again after that night. But somehow, I didn't want it to. It was perfect as it was. A reminder of the moment time stood still for Grandpa and Mary. One evening, while I was working in the restored living room, the clock made a single tick. I froze, looking up. The hands had moved, just a fraction, but enough to point at the note ID taped beside it. Time reveals everything. I don't believe in ghosts, but at that moment, I felt him there. Maybe it was my imagination. Or maybe Grandpa just wanted me to know that I had done the right thing. Since then, I've learned that family isn't defined by who shares your blood. It is defined by who shares your heart and your values. Grandpa's last gift wasn't the clock. It was the truth. And though it took time to uncover, I finally understood what he meant. Time doesn't just heal, it reveals. And when it does, the truth can change everything.